in my sermon. We're not in Hebrews 10. That was for Bible class. But we're in Mark chapter 11. And ultimately, when we're done looking at this, fruit is at the center of what God is saying. This is what's really important. And so we're here in Mark 11. And last week I said, we had 10 chapters where Jesus was trying to say to everybody, trying to open their eyes to the fact that not only that he is Messiah, that wasn't really the issue, but what does it mean to be Messiah? What did he come to do? And nobody understood. Everybody was blind to that. Even his own disciples were still half blind to that, because they would call him Messiah, but they still thought that they were on their way to Jerusalem. They were going to take the chief seats. They were going to be the most important people. They were going to be, in seats of power. That's what they're heading for. Nobody got it. Nobody understood. And then last week we did blind Bartimaeus, which is really the point. Everybody's blind. They don't know what Jesus is coming to do. The right response to Jesus would be like Bartimaeus, to recognize his need for mercy, to confess Jesus as Messiah, to ask him for mercy and receive healing, and then follow Jesus on the road. That's exactly what should happen when Jesus goes into Jerusalem, but it's not going to happen. It should. That's what it would look like, but it's not going to happen because everybody's blind. They don't understand what God is doing. And so now we're going into chapter 11. And we're leaving chapter 10 with this crowd of people that came out of Jericho. And we don't know what happened in Jericho, but now there's a big crowd. But we do know where the crowds are coming from. It's a Passover, and there's crowds coming from, most of the Jews are dispersed across the known world, the Mediterranean world. And so they're coming from all over because it's a major feast. And they try to make the three major feasts, but not everybody can. But the Passover is a really big one, so they're all coming. And I think there's going to be millions of Jews in Jerusalem for this Passover. So there's great crowds coming, and these guys out of Jericho, they not only would have heard that there's something happening, the Messiah's here, but now here's Jesus, and he heals the blind guy, and they're like, yeah, that's him. And so now we have them coming in chapter 11, and I'm not going to read all the text, so you'll have to check me out on this. It's there. You can read it, but anyway, they're following. This is where he gets the donkey. Sorry. So Jesus gets a young colt, never been used. This is a holy thing. In the Old Testament, the young colt is used for holy purposes, or anything that's never been ridden or never been used. It's holy purposes. And here's Jesus coming on this young colt, the foal of a donkey. But it's saying he's coming to bring peace. If he wanted to bring war, he'd be on a war horse. But he's coming to bring peace. But anyway, I want you to get into the mentality of the people. They're coming into the city, and they're coming with Jesus, and they're laying their coats down, and they're shouting, Hosanna, save us. Blessed is the one coming in the name of David. Blessed is the coming kingdom of David. They're all in this mentality. They've got this idea of what's about to happen. Has anybody ever been let down? Anybody ever experienced something that was anticlimactic? I had different examples, but I've used some of my time, so I want to give one major one. Anybody remember all the hype leading up to Y2K? Right? It was all going to end. The computers were going to crash. Everything was going to, go haywire. Nothing was going to work anymore. For those of us who lived into that Y2K thing, there was all kinds of angst about whatever that was, right? What happened? I don't know. December 31st turned to January 1st. And I don't remember. Did something big happen? Maybe I forgot. As far as I know, nothing happened. Maybe those who are in the tech world and science or something maybe know something happened. But as far as I know, nothing happened. It was just much to do about nothing. Anticlimactic. Oh, Y2K is coming. Y2K. And nothing happened. I tell you that because I want to get you into this incredible scene that it's easy to just read over and not even see that it happens. But there's this incredible scene in Mark 11 right here that is so anticlimactic. It's crazy. So in order to get that, you understand this. Let's understand how the Gospel of Mark is put together, and Matthew and Luke, by the way. So let me ask you this, because I think you know some of this. How old was Jesus when he died? 33. Everybody says 33. And so his ministry was about how long? About 3 years. Does the Bible say that? You know, the Bible doesn't say that. You're right. You're shaking your head. It doesn't say that. How do we know that? Well, we know his ministry started at 30 because the Bible does say that. Well, then, in the Gospel of John, we read there are 3 Passovers mentioned, and there's one that we infer, or that is implied, it seems. So 4 Passovers. Well, how many years is that? Well, if Jesus started his ministry and then there was a Passover not too long after that, and then you have 1, 2, 3, 4 Passovers, from the first to the second is 1 year, from the second to the third is 2 years, from the third to the fourth is 3 years. 4 Passovers, 3 years. Jesus' ministry is 3 years or so. 3 years plus some time, right? That's what John does. And in John, Jesus is at many of the feasts. He's at the Passover. He's at Feast of the Tabernacles or Festival of Lights. He's at the dedication of the temple, which is Hanukkah. He's at these feasts. And in John, there's all these moments of duking it out with the religious leaders. All the questions they ask, the traps they try to place, and the questions Jesus asks, and he always gets them, right? There's all this interaction with Jerusalem in John. Set John aside for a moment. Matthew, Mark, and Luke don't do that. If we only had Matthew, Mark, and Luke, then, well, let me ask you. In Mark, we've just gone through 10 chapters of Mark. How many times have we been to Jerusalem? None, right? We started in, let me go do this backwards because you're looking at a map this way. We started in Nazareth, moved over to Capernaum, did our ministry around the Sea of Galilee back and forth. Then we went up to the region of Tyre and Sidon where the Zarephath widow was with Elijah. And then we went back down along the backside of the Sea of Galilee and dealt with the Gentiles and helped them and fed them and healed them. And then we got back over to Tiberias where the Pharisees got mad at us for doing all that and questioned us about signs. Then we crossed over to Bethsaida and healed the blind man. Then we went to Caesarea Philippi, and then the Mount of Transfiguration, came back, and then we're on our way to Jerusalem. In Luke it says Jesus resolutely set his face to Jerusalem. So we did all this ministry in Galilee throughout the gospel. And in chapters 9 and 10, now we're headed from Caesarea Philippi, we're headed all the way down past Galilee, along the Jordan River, all the way down to the Dead Sea, over where Jerusalem is. Of course, Jericho, then Jerusalem. So we're doing all of this, and on the way, remember, what are the disciples doing? They're arguing about who's the greatest, and they're trying to figure out who gets the best seats. Who gets the best seats where? When we get to Jerusalem, right? Their expectation as we're heading toward Jerusalem is, it's all about to happen. We're going to get there, and we're going to be the cool ones, and we're going to be set up, and I'm going to have the right, and you're going to have the left, right? That's all about to happen. So their entire ministry in the Gospel of Mark and Matthew and Luke, the entire ministry is all up here in Galilee. And now it's like the Battle of OK Corral is about to happen. We're meeting Billy the Kid at high noon or something like that. We're heading down to Jerusalem and it's all about to happen. Now, does that sound fair? I mean, we've done this whole text. We've been through Mark. This is what happened. And now we're heading up and people are shouting, Hosanna, save us. And it's all about to happen. And the disciples are going up there. It's like, yay. We're about to, take the top seats. But not just the disciples. This big crowd. What are they expecting? Right? They're expecting what's been promised. They're shouting, Hosanna. They're shouting, save us. They're shouting, Son of David and Kingdom of David. So they're expecting something. Where'd they get that expectation? Well, 500 years ago, Daniel laid out a timetable. And everybody knew it was that time. And now there's a guy healing people and doing miracles, and it must be him. And so they're shouting and they're laying their coats. He must be the king, the Messiah. And here he is. We're going into Jerusalem. And it's all about to happen. 500 years has waited for this. But shouting Son of David means they're going back 1,000 years. Now we're all the way back to the kingdom of David, where God promises, I'm going to put someone on your throne, and he's going to come and set up his kingdom and Solomon's temple, the glory of God returning and all of that. 1,000 years is about to come right now. And for the theologians, it goes back even further. 1,400 years to Moses saying, God is going to raise up a prophet like me who'll save you. And goes back further than that. 2,000 years when God told Abraham, and through your seed all nations will be blessed. And it goes back even further than that to the very beginning when God tells the serpent, the woman's seed, he tells Satan, the woman's seed is going to crush your head. Right? All of human history is happening. It's right now. We're heading up into Jerusalem. It's all happening right now. And it says this in verse 11. Jesus entered Jerusalem. Remember, the crowds are there. They're following him. They're laying their coats down. They're putting palm branches. It's Palm Sunday. It's all happening. Jesus entered Jerusalem and went to the temple courts. He looked around at everything. But since it was already late, he went out to Bethany with the 12. That's it. That's what happened. What'd the crowd do? Well, they dispersed. They went to do whatever they were going to Jerusalem to do and probably found lodging. And that's it. You get it? Huge letdown. It's on purpose. Mark is telling us there's something to happen here, but it wasn't. Listen, no matter what Jesus did and whatever Jesus does do, none of it is going to be in the minds of those who were expecting something. Not whatever they're expecting, that's not what Jesus is doing here. Everything that they thought was happening, no matter what Jesus does, it's not that. It's just not that. So even if he did something, they wouldn't understand it. They wouldn't get it. And the fact is, he did do something. We just didn't see it. He did do something. What does it say he did there in the yellow? He came into Jerusalem. He went into the temple courts, and he did something. What does it say he did? He looked. He looked around. What did he look around at? Everything. He did do something. He looked around at everything. Luke tells us right at this point, Jesus wept. He uses more than 2 words. That's John, right, 11:34 or something. But he tells us, at this point, entering in Jerusalem, Jesus got in and wept. He does something here. We don't see it yet. We're told he looked at everything, but we don't really get that yet. But just know, he does something here, and we'll see it as we go. But when we read it, we say, well, it says it was late. We get the idea that it was late, meaning, oh, everybody's gone. He got there and nobody's home. I mean, poor planning Jesus, right? Why didn't you plan better than that? Why didn't you wait till the next day, right? Well, you could have stayed in Jericho, but so he gets there and nobody's there, and he looks around, nobody's there, so he goes home. That's what it looks like. I don't know if anybody reads it that way, but that's what it looks like. It feels like that, but it's not what happened. If you were there, it's still hustling and bustling. It's late in the day. It's not over. The day's not over. It's just late in the day. There's still hustle and bustle. It's not Sabbath. They don't have to go by sundown anywhere. But there's so many people that have to be processed. So many people have to get their temple stuff paid, their animals checked. There's so much that has to be done. There are evening duties for the priests that still have to be done. It's all still there. What he did was he went and he looked at everything. And when it says it was late, as we read on, it just seems to leave an impression, like a taste in your mouth, that it was late. It was late for Jerusalem. It was late for the temple. It was really too late to salvage any of it. Jesus makes a judgment here. You say, well, how do you know that? Well, you're going to see in a second, but he makes a judgment here. He looks at everything and judgment is made. There's no question about what has to be done. That's what happens here. We don't know it for a few verses, but trust me, something happens, and it's huge. Nobody sees it. They don't know. So, the next day, so that's all. He just looked around, went to Bethany. The next day, as they were leaving Bethany, Jesus was hungry. Seeing in the distance a fig tree and leaf, he went to find out if it had any fruit. When he reached it, he found nothing but leaves, because it was not the season for figs. And then he said to the tree, "May no one ever eat fruit from you again." And his disciples heard him say it. This is one of several passages that people just get wrong. Like, Jesus looks like he's hangry here. He looks like he needs a Snickers bar. You guys know that commercial? You got this gremlin and you're like, you feed him a Snickers bar. Oh, that's my little kid. Anybody lived that? Yeah, some of us have lived that. But not with Mackenzie, of course. But doesn't it look like Jesus is a little bit out of control here? Like, what's it saying? For some people it says, well, Jesus was hungry, so he went to a fig tree, and he didn't find any figs, but of course he wouldn't because it wasn't the season of figs. But he killed it anyway. Right? Like, why weren't there any figs? Well, it wasn't the season for figs. Then why was he looking for figs? Because he was hungry. Well, why did he curse the fig tree? Because it didn't have any figs. But it wasn't the season for figs. So, doesn't this look like a horrible exertion of power? It's horrible. But some people go with it. That's all they see there. But it's not what's happening there. Listen, first you need to know a fig tree, many fig trees, but especially these in Israel, the fig trees, the fruit comes with the leaves. If you see a tree full of leaves, a fig tree full of leaves, in that area of Israel, if you see it, there's fruit. Unless something. If the tree's not dead, if it's full of leaves, there will be fruit unless what? What possible reason could there be that you would walk up to a fruit tree and there's no fruit on it, but it's alive? And anybody? Already been picked, because it was the season of that fruit. You see, he walked up to the fig tree, but there were no figs. So if we put the period, there's no punctuation in the Greek. And so the way this, in my view, because the way it stands does not fit the judgment on the temple. The way it stands, this is supposed to be a parable judgment on the temple. And the way it fits, the way it doesn't fit. Jesus came to this tree, and it wasn't supposed to have any fruit, but it didn't, and so he killed it. And so he came to the temple, wasn't supposed to be bearing fruit for God, and it wasn't, so he judged and condemned it. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't work. They were supposed to be bearing fruit. There should have been fruit. That's why the judgment, but not the tree. No, the way that it's supposed to be read is, so when he reached it, he found nothing but leaves. Period. Not comma. Period. Next paragraph. Because it wasn't the season of figs, I'm going to reinterpret that for you. Because figs had not yet been harvested and found in the marketplace, because they should not have been already taken off this tree, and we're not finding them in the marketplace, because it wasn't the season for that yet, and there should have been figs on the tree, because of that reason, he did what? He cursed it. May no one ever eat from you again. Does that make sense? That's what's happening here. The only time there wouldn't be figs on a tree full of leaves is when they've taken them all and they're selling them in the marketplace, or they gathered them into their house and they're giving them to their friends because they got so many. Anybody here have that? We had somebody in Sunny Hills that had an orange tree. Oh, best oranges ever. So good. I think they were navel oranges, but they were big and they were just sweet and juicy and delicious. And every time around the winter, that's when oranges come, right? You need the citrus. But anyway, huge tree. And she'd come on over, get some. And we would. Delicious oranges. That's what you do when you have a bunch. But anyway, if you have this tree, do you just let all the fruit drop onto the ground and go bad? You don't want to do that. So when it's the time of figs, you do what? You harvest them and you bring them either to your house and give them away to your friends, or you bring it to the market and you sell them. That's what happens in the season of figs. It's not saying there weren't supposed to be any figs. And so reading it correctly, the point of the tree is it's full of leaves and it's saying, come and be refreshed. Come and let me feed you. Come and experience the delight of figs. But there are no figs. And that's the point for the cursing. Now you get into Jerusalem. On reaching Jerusalem, Jesus entered the temple courts. Does he start any conversations with anybody? Does he go try to talk to people about possibly what should be doing different? No, it seems like he's already made up his what? When did he do that? The day before. He looked at everything, he saw what was going on, and he's like, and it seems like he's a little upset about it, if you ask me. On reaching Jerusalem, Jesus entered the temple courts and began driving out those who were buying and selling there. He overturned the tables of the money changers and the benches of those selling doves, would not allow anyone to carry merchandise through the temple courts. And as he taught, he says, is it not written, my house will be called a house of prayer for all nations, but you've made it a den of robbers. So what's going on here? What's he upset about? Some people think he's upset because there's people selling stuff. Jill and I actually left a ministry where there were people we loved. But we left a ministry because we sort of got into with the leadership over a silly thing. We were in the high desert where it got to be 157 degrees, not really, but really hot. And our playground consisted of really grainy, horrible sand and a solid steel slide. A bright silver solid steel slide. Can you imagine if a kid went on that with shorts in the summertime? So the young people of the youth group decided, hey, let's sell donuts and raise some money to buy the good stuff, the stuff that makes your hair stand up with static and all that, right? You know those. We want that stuff, right? So we started selling donuts, like 5 dozen a week. And we had a sign that said, the donuts cost, I don't know, 50 cents or 65 cents or something, and the other 35 cents you're giving to this equipment. We sold 60 donuts, made, I don't know, 30 bucks, 35 bucks, or whatever it was. Rusty's doing the math in his head already. But I don't remember the figures, but I know we had it all laid out. We were telling people we're raising money, but also you can get a donut, right? And so we were just slowly putting away money to buy this equipment. Like one person in the church had this idea from this text, well, you're not supposed to sell stuff in the church. Now, if you believe that, I'm not trying to offend you. I'm not trying to step on your toes. But I'm just telling you that's not what's going on here. But the eldership, they shut us down because of that one person. Didn't care that they were totally bulldozing over these kids and their hopes and what they were trying to do. And I tried to defend it. I tried to say, no, you guys are on the wrong track here. You should be doing. And it was not pretty. And Jill went and had words with those elders. So just to let you know. Come whenever the vote. Is there a vote this year for me? Just know Jill's. She's in the batter's box. But anyway, but this was really serious to somebody. Okay, but that's not what this text is about at all. You see, money changers. Well, they need to have money changers. You can't use your money if you owe like a day's wages to pay at the temple for the temple tax, and you're supposed to pay the temple tax. You can't do that with Roman or Greek money. You can't bring that into the temple. You need temple money. And so there has to be an exchange place. And sheep, some people are coming from Rome or coming from Corinth or coming from all over. Some of them can't bring the animal with them or don't want to. is too troubling. And so they want to be able to get there, want to be able to buy an animal. So you have to have people selling animals. And then the Bible says it should be a sheep without defect that you're offering, so you have to have an inspector. There's a reason for all these things. So what's the problem? Well, that's not the problem. There's two problems here that Jesus is upset about. He says you're making it a temple, you're making it a den of thieves. So one of the problems is you've come there to pay your day's wages, but the exchange rate is 50%. So that one day's wages, if you're going to pay your tax, costs you 2 days' wages. You ever buy popcorn at the movie theater? You know, if you go to Costco, you get a bottle of water out of the machine for 25 cents. How much is it at Disneyland? Anybody ever feel that gut punch? Especially if you have 8 people with you. At Disney World, hey, I want a churro. They're $4 each for this thing. You get $1 at Costco, right? Give me a bottle of water. It's $3 or $4 out of the machine. I don't know what it is now, but you got 8 people. There's $3. I just spent $25 for water. No, we wouldn't. Jill said, get a cup of water from them. They'll give it to you. I'm not buying that out of the bottle, I think. But you know what it is to get ripped off, don't you? Listen, a long time ago, Jill and I decided we're just going to pay the money at the movie theater. We're just buying the popcorn. 3 cents worth of popcorn. I'll pay $18 or whatever it is. Because we're just going to have a time. We're going to have a date. You know? She doesn't make me take her to Paris. I'm going to pay $25 for popcorn and candy. Right? Some of the men are saying, shut up, Randy. Shut up. But you know when you're being ripped off and it doesn't feel good. These guys were bringing their families, bringing kids. Maybe they're bringing their son to show them all this. Or maybe their daughters, hopefully. They're bringing them and they're like, oh, look at all this doings. And God is here and we're participating in this worship and it's wonderful. That's what they wanted to come for. But at every stage, they're getting punched in the gut by God. And so that's upsetting. Jesus like, you're a bunch of thieves. That's upsetting. And the priest class were wealthy. They were making bank off of this. But that wasn't the worst thing they were doing, believe it or not. Did you notice? Jesus said, is it not written, my house will be called what? A house of prayer. For who? What? What do you mean? What do you mean all nations? In the house? A prayer for all nations? In the Jewish house that they had for God? A house of prayer for all nations? Is that really what he meant? This is what Isaiah is foreseeing in that time of the Messiah, in the time of God's rebuilding. And foreigners who bind themselves to the Lord, to minister to him, to love the name of the Lord, and to be his servants who keep the Sabbath without desecrating it and who hold fast to my covenant. These I will bring to my holy mountain and give them joy in my house of prayer. Their burnt offerings and sacrifice will be accepted on my altar, for my house will be called a house of prayer for all nations. The sovereign Lord declares, he who gathers the exiles of Israel, I will gather still others besides them. And besides those already gathered. Jesus said, I have other sheep that are not of this sheepfold. Who is he talking about? The Gentiles. This entire book of Mark, and I'll tell you what, I don't think I'm pretty sure I didn't really understand this until we did this study, but it's just become so clear to me. How much emphasis in this gospel has Jesus put on, you guys hate the Gentiles. But God loves the Gentiles. He's bringing the Messiah for the Gentiles too. You were supposed to be a light unto the Gentiles, the nations, right? That's the nation. That's the word for the Gentiles. When you say all the nations, you mean Jews too, but when you're just talking about the nations, that's the word for the Gentiles. Ta ethna, all the Gentiles. Does it look in Jerusalem, does it look like they were making a place for the Gentiles? In fact, the place outside that half wall, we saw this a few weeks ago, where the Gentiles were allowed to go was way out there, and there was a sign that said, don't come any closer or you'll die. How'd that feel? And not only that, in the Gentile court, which was supposed to be a place of prayer, what was going on? Hustle and bustle and commerce and selling and trading and buying and ripping people off. How is anybody supposed to pray there? What does Jesus do? That's why I say it's more important even than the thievery. What are Jesus' actions? He drives them all out. He cleanses the temple. When we read it, we're like, oh, he did this because they were dishonoring God. The focus is on God, and they're dishonoring God. So he's like, hey, get out of here, you jerks. You're not treating God right. And that's true, but that's not his point. Can you see that? His point is, you're not treating these Gentiles right. God has made a place for them. He gets everybody out of there, and it specifically says he doesn't even let anybody carry the stuff through this courtyard. If that's what you've prepared for the Gentiles, then that's what it's for. He makes it a place of prayer. His focus is on the Gentiles that they have been hurting. And through the Gospel of Mark so far, we've seen that they're really mistreating not just the Gentiles, but a lot of people. What we saw when we looked at the temple, they pushed women outside this big giant bronze gate. God doesn't want you any closer than that. They pushed the Gentiles out over a football field away. God doesn't want you any closer than that. And how'd they treat anybody who had leprosy or had a paralysis or had blindness or ear? How'd they make them feel? Well, you're being punished. We know God's mad at you. And tax collectors, they were supposed to be even loving tax collectors. Maybe didn't agree with them, but they were supposed to love them. But how'd they treat them? In the temple, the Pharisees, I'm thankful I'm not like that jerk over there, right? What was the fruit coming out of the temple of God? It didn't taste or look anything like God. That's what made Jesus. He was upset. He was upset. And we'll call it zeal. Zeal for God's house consumed him. He was upset. And he drove them out of there. Righteously. Not out of some petty anger. And not out of how people read the tree. But righteously. He brought judgment on the house. They just weren't bearing the fruit of God. And that's why I love that Keith sent me the videos and the pictures, the statement from Derek. We're not perfect. We don't bear fruit all the time, at every moment. But as a church and individually, we need to know that what they didn't know, they were blind to. And that is, it's God's intention that those who do not know him can get a taste of him, can smell him on us, can experience some refreshment from us. And I know we're not there all the time, but we need to know that's what we're supposed to be living for. Our mission as the body of Christ is to be Jesus in the world. His body, with his mind in control. And what does he want to be happening in his body, in his temple, in his mind? He wants people to be loved. He wants people to be treated like God loves them. He wants people to be invited and feel invited by God to draw near. And that is the blindness Jesus came into, that he tried to correct. And I just pray that we don't fall into that blindness today. Because if he came back, I think a lot of people would be surprised. If God puts something on your heart today, I'd love to talk to you about that. You can make a response today. If you have prayer needs, you can come up and ask us to pray. I know we don't do that a lot, but really, if you're suffering with something, you're allowed during this song. You're allowed to get up and come up here. And Dennis will be leading singing, but maybe Keith will come up and pray with you, or I'll pray with you. It doesn't matter. But we'd love to pray about what's on your heart, if that's what you'd like to do. It's okay. We set aside that time. If there's anything, we invite you now. Come up as we stand and sing this song.